Over the past 2 decades, the people of the Sun family had gradually become more arrogant. In Qishui City, there was also a branch of the Sun family. At this moment, inside the main hall of this branch, 3 elders of the Sun family, each at the spirit transformation stage, were seated. In front of them were the people involved in the tavern incident, all gathered here. This was Qing Yi's first time in such a setting. She felt quite nervous and kept her head lowered, her demeanor respectful. Her master, the Golden Pill Cultivator, was also standing beside her. However, his face was pale, and his cultivation had fallen from the Golden Pill stage to the late Foundation Establishment stage. Did this person really say that? One of the 3 Sun family elders, a red-faced old man, asked calmly as he slightly opened and closed his eyes. The Sun family cultivator who had previously stopped Wang Lin, now in the late nascent soul stage, quickly nodded and said, "I didn't hear wrong. This person did say it. He said this is the one and only time. It won't happen again." A cold snort came from another elder, dressed in green. His eyes glinted with coldness as he spoke icily. It seems someone is trying to provoke the Sun family again. This person can shatter the golden pill of a cultivator with a glance, and with a single step, force 3 nascent soul cultivators to retreat. His cultivation must have reached the infant metamorphosis stage. So what if he's in the infant metamorphosis stage? Our Sun family's ancestor is still around, and we also have that senior protecting us for 100 years. Even the Phantom Clan of Illusion Star doesn't dare to provoke that senior. With him here, our Sun family will never collapse. The 3rd elder said indifferently, "What's this person's surname?" The red-faced elder asked for the 2nd time. The cultivators below fell silent. After a long pause, the nascent soul elder with a bitter smile said, "We don't know, but I saw this foreign clan member speaking with them. Perhaps she knows." The red-faced elder's gaze turned to Qing Yi. "Do you know?" Qing Yi trembled, and after a moment of silence, she shook her head. "I don't know." Such audacity. The red-faced elder's eyes narrowed. With his experience, he could easily tell that this girl was lying. Qing Yi lowered her head bitterly and whispered, "I truly don't know." The red-faced elder snorted coldly, stood up, and said, "We will put this matter aside for now. I have already reported it to the clan, and soon, a cultivator in the infant metamorphosis stage will come here. As for this foreign clan member, since she has shown a second thought, expel her from the Sun family. I want to see how this person dares to speak so arrogantly, claiming this is the one and only time. In Renegade Star, no one can speak like that to my Sun family." In the north of Qishui City, inside the Wang family's large courtyard, the previous plaque was taken down, and a new one was hung. On it, Wang Lin personally wrote the 2 large characters, Wang Residence. There were no changes to the maids and servants in the residence. Wang Lin kept them all. As a result, the previously cold and empty atmosphere became a little more lively. Late at night, under the moonlight, Wang Lin and his son sat across from each other in the study. "Xun'er, 19 years of ordinary life, 8 years of seeing the world. Now I'll give you 30 years of wealth. In a person's life, joy, anger, sorrow, and happiness, you must understand them all. Wealth and poverty are the same," Wang Lin said softly. Wang Ping remained silent for a long time, then smiled slightly. His eyes shone brightly as he said, "Father, is this your compensation for not letting me cultivate?" Wang Lin looked at Wang Ping and slowly replied, "Yes." His gaze passed over Wang Ping and fell outside the window, where a trace of sorrow rose in a place Wang Ping couldn't see. This sorrow was so deep that no one could understand it. All the secrets, Wang Lin could only keep them in his heart. Even though he knew that Wang Ping's obsession with cultivation and the resentment hidden deep within his heart were there, toward him. "Xun'er, it's not that your father doesn't want you to cultivate. It's because you can't cultivate." Wang Lin sighed softly, his sorrow deepening, growing so heavy that it couldn't be dispelled. "Father, what is wealth?" Wang Ping asked softly. "What kind of wealth do you want?" Wang Lin replied calmly, retracting his gaze. "You've taught me before that one must go against the heavens, never to be suppressed by this world. When faced with mountains, one climbs. When faced with rivers, one crosses. When faced with seas, one crosses. And when faced with this world, one must never submit. Since you don't let me cultivate, I will become the supreme among mortals." Wang Ping looked at his father. If you wanna, you can. Wang Lin closed his eyes and said. Wang Ping had grown up. Under Wang Lin's influence, he gradually developed his own views. He was no longer the child who only followed his father's instructions. He had his own ideas, his own aspirations. Wang Ping looked at his father and said softly, I don't want the easy path to supremacy. What I want is to fight for it myself. Then go ahead. Wang Lin said calmly, raising his hand. The shadow behind him walked out and merged into Wang Ping's back. With this, in Reunited Star, you can do anything. Wang Lin stood up, not looking at Wang Ping. He walked out of the study. His back seemed a little faltering, a little dejected. Wang Ping opened his mouth, as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he held it back. Instead, silently asking in his heart, Father, you can give me everything. Why won't you let me cultivate? Pinger wants to cultivate, not for myself, but for the promise of the past, so I can stay by your side forever. Father, you are too lonely, but why? Under the moonlight, Wang Lin stood in the courtyard. His shadow stretched long. He calmly returned to his room, lay down on his bed, and whispered, One day, you will understand. But I hope that day comes slowly. Or better yet, I hope you never know why. That night, Wang Ping couldn't sleep. 3 days later, outside Xun'er city, a person arrived. This person was dressed in black, appearing quite aged. After entering Xun'er city, he went straight to the Sun family's branch. All the cultivators of the Sun family's branch in Xun'er city came out to welcome him. Though they had already guessed that this person was likely a cultivator in the infant metamorphosis stage, when the three elders saw him, they still gasped and their expressions became even more respectful. Greetings, Deputy Clan Leader. This person was Sun Qiming. Many years ago, he had made great contributions to the Sun family because of Wang Lin's matter. Moreover, with his deep cultivation, having reached the late infant metamorphosis stage, he was promoted by Sun Shi to the position of the next generation's clan leader. Sun Qiming didn't waste time talking. He directly asked, Where is that person? The younger members of the family didn't understand the meaning of shattering the golden core with a glance, but he did. Even he, though capable of doing so, knew that after the next step, when no divine abilities were shown, even 3 nascent soul cultivators would retreat. If divine abilities were used, it could be explained, but if, as stated in the Jade Slip, no divine abilities were shown, then it could only be the work of an ancient monster. It was impossible for an ordinary cultivator to achieve this. Under the guide's lead, they quickly headed to the destination. Clan leader, this person is too arrogant, saying things like, This is the last time and never again. When has anyone dared? The elder in the green robe spoke halfway, but Sun Qiming frowned and shouted, Shut up. The elder in the green robe was stunned and quickly fell silent. Such a small matter, and yet you're making a big deal out of it. This person has shown mercy, but you're still being ungrateful. Sun Qiming's face darkened as he gave a cold glance at everyone. My Sun family is great, and in Reunited Star, we are above all. But this was all bought at a great cost in the past. If you keep going like this, one day, you'll bring a great enemy to the Sun family. Sun Qiming said in a deep voice. Grandfather Sun, with the protection of that senior from your family, even the strongest enemies wouldn't dare to provoke you, right? The speaker wasn't from the Sun family, but the young man in purple who had clashed with Wang Ping at the tavern. Sun Qiming's gaze fell on this youth, and he said flatly, A brat from the Cloud family. This matter started because of you. Be prepared, it won't be as easy to settle. This young man in purple was named Yun Wufeng, a member of the Yun family from Yunhai Star. Yunhai Star was one of the 5 main stars of the Luo Tian North region. He had poor natural talent, unable to cultivate, and was an outsider. He had come to Reunited Star with the Yun family merchant caravan, but stayed behind after seeing Qing Yi, whom he thought was a heavenly beauty. Unlike ordinary cultivators, who couldn't leave cultivation stars unless they were in the infant metamorphosis stage, families like the Yun family had ways to make it happen. Within the Yun family, he was of no significance due to his poor talent, but outside, with his Yun family status, he was treated with respect, especially by families on cultivation stars like Reunited Star. Yun Wufeng snorted coldly in his heart. Although he had no cultivation, as long as he was in the Luo Tian North region, no one dared to provoke him. Otherwise, they would be going against the Yun family. They reached the northern part of the city, and when they were about 100 meters away from the Wang residence, the Sun family cultivators following Sun Qiming stopped. Sun Qiming's expression was dark as he stared intently at the words, Wang residence, his brow furrowing. That surname Wang. When he had entered Shui City earlier, he had swept the area with his divine sense and found nothing unusual. Now, probing again, the result was the same. After pondering for a moment, Sun Qiming stepped forward and, stopping 10 paces away, cupped his fists and loudly said, Sun family member, Sun Qiming, greets Taoist friend. His voice, imbued with immortal power, clearly carried to everyone's ears within the Wang residence. Not long after, a servant walked out. This servant had a fair face, and after glancing at the Sun family cultivators, he said, The master has instructed, you are to leave. Before Sun Qiming could speak, a member of the Sun family behind him sneered. The one sneering was the red-faced elder, who didn't even look at the servant but coldly said, Such arrogance, does he really think my Sun family is beneath him? With that, he took a step forward and headed straight for the gate of the residence. Sun Qiming frowned tightly, staring at the words, Wang residence, but did not stop him. Instead, he fell into deep thought. The red-faced elder, who had reached the spirit transformation stage, moved forward and in a single step was near, directly stepping into the entrance. However, just as his right foot landed, his face turned pale, as though an invisible force had emanated from within the residence, shaking his mind. He spat out a mouthful of blood and staggered backward several steps, his face ashen, eyes filled with shock. Sun Qiming's expression changed drastically. In that instant, he had felt an overwhelming presence, one that he recognized, one belonging to an ancient monster. Without hesitation, Sun Qiming grabbed the red-faced elder and threw him backward. Then, cupping his fists toward the Wang residence, he respectfully said, Apologies for disturbing your cultivation, we will leave now. He spoke, and with a wave of his sleeve, along with all the members of the Sun family by his side, they vanished in an instant. When they reappeared, they were already inside the Sun family's branch hall in this city. All Sun family members are forbidden from stepping within 1,000 feet of the elder's residence. Anyone who dares to do so will have their cultivation crippled and be expelled from the family. Sun Qiming's heart was still pounding even at this moment. Sweat was subtly trickling down his forehead. Only he could possess such cultivation, shattering the golden core with a single glance. Sun Qiming took a deep breath. The Sun family members here had never seen such an expression on Sun Qiming before. Coupled with his hasty departure earlier, their hearts involuntarily trembled. Among the three elders, the one in green robes glanced at the elderly man with a flushed face, his soul almost on the brink of collapse, and his heart quivered. He asked, Family head, who is that person? Sun Qiming snorted coldly and said, You all have guts to provoke this senior. You must all know him. This is someone who even our ancestors would treat with the utmost respect. If it weren't for him, the Sun family would never have reached this point. Could it be that person? The elder in green froze, a name suddenly rising in his mind. Sun Qiming glanced at him and nodded. In that instant, everyone from the Sun family turned pale. Just this once, and never again. That sentence appeared in their minds. Even the young man in purple also sensed something strange at this point, and his face immediately turned ugly. He clearly remembered that when he proposed staying in Ranyun Star for a while, the elder of his family's trade caravan had warned him not to provoke a certain person here. That person was none other than Su Mu, the son of the man who had swept through the Phantom clan years ago, making the Sun and Su families not dare to intervene. The name Su Mu had spread throughout the entire northern region over the past 30 years. After all, the battle with the Phantom clan had been so astonishing that countless cultivators still felt fear when recalling it. In a daze, Yun Wufeng returned to the room in the Sun family residence. Inside, Qing Yi was sitting silently, her face pale, her cultivation sealed as if she were a mere mortal. After being expelled from the Sun family, she was captured and brought here. Naturally, there were those within the Sun family who sought to win favor with the Cloud clan members. Yun Wufeng entered the room, too preoccupied to even glance at the captured Qing Yi. Instead, he stared blankly at the flickering candlelight, his heart filled with regret. Qing Yi glared at Yun Wufeng, her eyes cold as ice. It's all because of you. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have provoked Su Mu's son. It's all your fault. Yun Wufeng suddenly turned and glared at Qing Yi. Qing Yi didn't speak, her eyes still cold, but in the next moment, her eyes widened in disbelief as she looked behind Yun Wufeng. Yun Wufeng froze and turned, only to see darkness before his eyes as he collapsed to the ground. Senior. Qing Yi hurriedly rose and spoke respectfully. Wang Lin stepped out from the shadows and sat beside her, holding a wine pot. He took a sip and slowly said, "Your talent is decent. Stay with my son for 60 years, and I'll grant you nascent soul cultivation." Qing Yi froze, the image of Wang Ping flashing in her mind. Her face flushed slightly, and after a moment of silence, she nodded gently. 3 days later, Wang Ping departed, and Qing Yi followed him. Wang Ping, carrying his ideals, left Shui City. He could not bear a life of mediocrity. What he wanted was something spectacular. Wang Lin stayed behind. On the night Wang Ping left, he drank heavily. With his cultivation, he wouldn't normally get drunk, but that night, he did. For the first time in his 800 years of life, he was drunk. His appearance, without the use of any spells, grew visibly older. Life continued as usual, and time flowed slowly, turning the inevitable cycle of reincarnation. 3 years passed in the blink of an eye. During these 3 years, Wang Ping's whereabouts were unknown. Wang Lin did not attempt to use his divine sense to search for him. Since he had granted Wang Ping freedom and choice, he would not interfere. In the northern part of Reunited Star, a new sect had appeared over these 3 years. This sect was called the Heavenly Path Sect. It was only known among mortals and had not involved cultivators. The Heavenly Path Sect grew rapidly, gradually spreading from the north of Reunited Star like a wildfire, burning endlessly, growing ever stronger. Rumors spread like snowflakes, gradually falling. The leader of the Heavenly Path Sect was said to be an immortal, and this leader was always accompanied by a woman. 7 more years passed in the blink of an eye. Wang Lin looked even older. The Heavenly Path Sect's development resembled a rolling snowball, growing larger and larger, until even within Shui City, its followers could be found. That autumn, as the autumn wind blew, Wang Lin stepped out of his house as usual. He sat quietly in a nearby inn, drinking wine. His eyes were murky, as though he could no longer see the world clearly. He merely stared out the window, as if waiting for something. The innkeeper had long been accustomed to the old man. After serving the wine and dishes, he left to attend to the other guests. As noon approached, more people filled the inn. The sounds of chatter and laughter echoed, creating a lively atmosphere. Have you heard? The influence of the Heavenly Path Sect has already taken over most of Reunited Star, becoming the leading sect among the 3 great empires. Even in Shui City, there's a branch of the Heavenly Path Sect. I went to see it a few days ago. My neighbor, Xun'er, is a follower of the Heavenly Path Sect. They even send food supplies every month. The 3 great nations, Great Qin, Dishan, and Dust Cloud, especially Dishan in the north, almost everyone there is a follower of the Heavenly Path Sect. The way the Heavenly Path Sect is growing, it won't be long before the 3 great empires come together to wipe them out. Otherwise, if they had been planning to destroy it, they would have acted long ago. The Heavenly Path Sect has been developing for 10 years now. Rather than all this, I'm more interested in the relationship between the leader of the Heavenly Path Sect and the woman who has always been by his side. Wang Lin calmly drank his wine. Everything around him seemed distant and irrelevant. His gaze fixed on the far horizon, as though he could see through the distance, spotting the middle-aged Wang Ping, full of vigor. The man was extraordinarily handsome, dressed in a blue robe that exuded an air of nobility. There was a distinct aura of authority about him. On the table in front of him was a map. His eyes were filled with deep thought as he stared at it for a long time before finally looking away. It was already late at night. The moonlight fell outside, and the man silently stood up, walking outside the hall. He gazed at the vast world bathed in moonlight, letting out a soft sigh. I wonder if my father is looking at this same world right now. A plush cloak was draped over the man's shoulders. He raised his hand to gently touch the fur covering his shoulder, smiling. "You're still awake?" A woman stepped out behind him. She was beautiful, and though she had aged, she still looked youthful, with a mature aura about her. Her eyes softened as she looked at the man and spoke in a gentle voice. "The night wind is cold. You should rest early." The man grasped her hand and gazed at the moon in the sky, slowly saying, "Qingyi, do you think father is wondering what I'm doing right now?" Qingyi's face flushed slightly. Even though she had been by this man's side for many years and had kept her word to his father, there was a bond between them now that had developed into affection. Still, at this moment, she felt like a little girl, her cheeks coloring. "You're the one who should be asking about your father," Qingyi whispered. The man laughed heartily, holding onto her hand. "My father is your father too." A sense of sweetness filled Qingyi's heart as she followed his gaze to the moon. "Father should be resting by now." The man's eyes glimmered with something strange, and he shook his head. "I can feel it. Father is watching me right now." In Xun'er City, inside the Wang residence, Wang Lin shifted his gaze from the distant horizon and sat under the large tree in the courtyard. With the autumn breeze, he listened to the sound of leaves rustling in the wind, and now and then, a leaf would fall and drift past his eyes. The fallen leaves always returned to the ground, just like wandering travelers who, when tired, would inevitably return to their loved ones. The years seemed to flow by silently, following the path of the falling leaves, and 5 years passed in the blink of an eye. The influence of the Heavenly Path sect had grown immensely, casting its shadow over the 3 great empires and spreading across all of Renegade Star. If things had continued this way, it might not have caused much of a stir. But then, a sudden change occurred in the Xun'er Empire to the north, as they began a full-scale crackdown on the Heavenly Path sect within their borders, sending large numbers of soldiers to eradicate them. This sudden upheaval was like pouring a cup of water into hot oil, sparking chaos throughout the mortal world of Renegade Star, stirring up a massive wave. The Heavenly Path sect's counterattack was swift and ruthless. In just half a month, they took control of the military forces in the Xun'er Empire without bloodshed, and among the court officials, 6 or 7 out of every 10 had already become followers of the Heavenly Path sect. This less than a month-long rebellion felt like a spring thunderclap, shocking everyone and leaving them unprepared. The Heavenly Path sect had shaken their very souls. The Great Qin and Dust Cloud empires did not act hastily. Instead, they sent emissaries to negotiate with the Heavenly Path sect and signed an agreement of non-aggression. The Xun'er Empire was no more. In its place stood the mighty Heavenly Path Empire. In the capital of the Heavenly Path Empire, Wang Ping stood in royal attire, gazing down at the world from the highest point. Beside him, Qingyi silently accompanied him. The ministers of the Heavenly Path Empire looked up at their new ruler. They could never quite understand this man, as though all the affairs of the world had never held his interest. It was as though even standing at this position today was merely to prove something to someone. Wang Ping's gaze swept past the land beneath him, traveling toward the distant horizon. The events in the Xun'er Empire had caught the attention of the cultivators on Renegade Star, and gradually, there were signs of interference. Wang Lin's life remained as calm as still water, without a single ripple. His face had grown even more aged, and this year marked the 5th anniversary of the founding of the Heavenly Path Empire. The Great Qin and Xun'er empires had torn apart the alliance agreement and launched an attack on the Heavenly Path nation. Amidst all this, Wang Lin paid no attention. He spent his days sitting in the inn, silently sipping wine as he listened to the surrounding people gossip about everything concerning the 3 nations. He never spoke a word. The inn's former waiter had borrowed some silver from his relatives and taken over the inn. Now, he was the owner, and the new staff was very familiar with Wang Lin. When they saw him enter, they hurriedly brought out the same wine and dishes as always. "You're getting old, sir. You should drink less wine," the waiter said kindly, placing the dishes down. Wang Lin smiled slightly and nodded, replying, "Just 1 pot today." The waiter chuckled and turned to attend to other guests. When there was a lull, he leaned on the counter near the door, watching Wang Lin's aging face and sighed. Lord Wang is a pitiable man. At his age, he has no children to keep him company. The innkeeper, who had been counting on the abacus, raised his hand and shook his head. I once heard from the maids in his household that Lord Wang has a son. However, he left home many years ago, and to this day, he hasn't returned. Wang Lin took a sip of wine, his gaze drifting outside the window. He remained like that for an entire day. At dusk, an old servant from his residence arrived at the inn. In their eyes, the old master had grown too old. If he wasn't drinking, it was fine, but once he did, someone had to be with him. If he fell, it could lead to illness. As the moonlight gradually rose, Wang Lin, accompanied by the old servant, returned home. The large, empty house was dim, without a single light. After dismissing the servant, Wang Lin sat in the yard, looking at the sky and muttering, "Time passes so quickly. Xun'er is already 47. Maybe he has sensed something." The war between the three great empires slowly unfolded, with Cultivator's involvement causing continuous accidents. However, everything changed when the ruler of the Heavenly Path Empire personally led the army. No matter the level of the Cultivator, they were all forced to retreat before him. Gradually, all cultivators who had interfered slowly withdrew from the mortal world. Aside from Wang Ping's actions, this also had much to do with the simultaneous orders from the Zhao, Ran, and Sun families. Within the army, in a golden tent, Wang Ping sat at the head, waving off several ministers. He stood and walked out of the tent, his gaze sweeping over the soldiers nearby before resting on the distant Chilean mountain. Wang Ping's appearance had grown somewhat older. His temples were entirely white, and after becoming the supreme ruler among mortals, he found little joy. The burden of affairs weighed heavily on him, leaving him with a deep sense of exhaustion. He suddenly longed for the 19 years of his youth, the days spent in a mountain village, experiencing everything in his childhood. In silence, he stared at the Chilean mountain. Xun'er walked out of the tent and stood by his side, softly saying, "You once said that place is where you spent your childhood. Would you like to go back and see it?" Xun'er, too, bore the traces of time on her face. She gazed at Wang Ping with gentle eyes. Wang Ping sighed lightly and said, "Let's go see it." A pair of soldiers followed behind them, and Wang Ping, with Xun'er at his side, walked toward the direction of Chilean Mountain. As they walked, Wang Ping absently looked around, and the sights before him, though unfamiliar, gave him a sense of familiarity. Gradually, he saw the smoke rising in the distance, Falling Moon Village, now in sight. As they drew near, perhaps due to the soldiers following them, loud barking from dogs immediately erupted in the village. In these chaotic times, the villagers of Falling Moon Village were highly alert. Hearing the barking, they immediately rushed out of their homes, armed with farming tools and torches, gazing at the group of armored soldiers and the two people dressed in plain clothes. Facing the villagers' wary eyes, Wang Ping remained silent. He looked at them but failed to recognize a single face. A bitter smile appeared on his face. Time passed like a song, and so many years had slipped by. Even those he once knew well were now unrecognizable. The changes were simply too great. Moreover, in nearly 30 years, countless souls had passed into reincarnation and were no longer around. "Let's go to the back mountain. There lies Grandpa's son." Xun'er sighed quietly and walked ahead with Wang Ping. The villagers ahead hesitated for a moment, then slowly parted, revealing a narrow path. At that moment, a soft, uncertain voice called out, "Wang Ping." Wang Ping paused in his steps, turning around. His gaze fell upon a woman in her 40s among the villagers. Though her appearance had aged slightly, to Wang Ping, it was as if he was seeing the girl from years ago who had once said, "I hate you." At this moment, far away in the starry sky, outside the misty cloud star that was formed from the moon's reflection, the figure of Greedy Wolf shot through the air like a meteor. As he gazed at the cloud star, Greedy Wolf sniffed the air, and a strange glint appeared in his eyes. As soon as I entered the northern Luo Heaven region, I could sense there was a treasure here. Following the aura, it seems I was right. The mist around this planet is dense, obviously concealing the treasure's light. But this planet, it seems a bit unusual. Greedy Wolf fixed his gaze on the cloud star. After a brief hesitation, he slowly began to fly forward. Throughout his life, there had never been a place devoid of treasure, and he had a terrifying intuition for sensing such things. As he drew closer, his heart began to race, and his eyes shone even brighter. This feeling, it's the same as when I took that grand cauldron. Could it be that this place holds a treasure comparable to that grand cauldron? Excitement flickered in Greedy Wolf's eyes. In that moment, all thoughts of Wang Lin and the seals were completely forgotten. He gritted his teeth and took out a storage pouch. Immediately, the massive black cauldron flew out, floating before him, and Greedy Wolf followed it closely, slowly vanishing into the mist. I have to see what this treasure is. Greedy Wolf licked his lips. Wang Ping walked up to the woman's side, gazing at her face that had lost its youthful radiance. He smiled and said, "Zhou." The middle-aged woman bit her lower lip and stared blankly at Wang Ping. After a long while, she smiled softly and said, "The moment I saw you, I recognized you. All these years, you've finally come back." Wang Ping looked at the woman in front of him, feeling a deep sense of emotion. By her side stood a young girl, around 10 years old, whose appearance closely resembled Zhou from years ago. "Is this your daughter?" Wang Ping asked. The woman nodded, then turned to the girl and said, "Call him Uncle. He was a friend of your mother's when she was young." "Uncle." The girl seemed shy, standing behind her mother and speaking softly. At this moment, a few villagers around them vaguely recognized Wang Ping, but upon seeing the heavily armored soldiers, they dared not approach to greet him. Wang Ping smiled at the little girl and asked, "What's your name?" The girl hid behind her mother, not speaking, a fearful expression in her eyes. Wang Ping sighed lightly, then turned to the woman and said, "I'll go up to the back mountain to pay respects to Grandpa's son." The woman smiled. Throughout the entire exchange, she never looked at Qing Yi by Wang Ping's side, instead holding her child's hand and standing by her husband. The man, a burly figure, had clearly inherited his father-in-law's hunting skills. But if Wang Ping looked closely, he would realize this man wasn't completely unfamiliar. Wang Ping turned and began walking towards the back mountain. Qing Yi, however, cast a lingering glance at the young woman who was gently caressing her daughter's hair before following Wang Ping. After Wang Ping took a few steps, the little girl, who had been hiding behind her mother, peeked her head out and called loudly, "Uncle, my name is Su Nianping." "Nianping, Nianping." Wang Ping's steps faltered, and he let out a soft sigh. Without turning around, he continued walking. It wasn't until they had walked a great distance, and the villagers had dispersed, that the burly man standing beside the woman let out a long sigh and murmured, "Why go through all this? Brother, don't say anything more." Zhou raised her head and smiled faintly. Her smile was beautiful, and her eyes sparkled with happiness. "Just seeing him again, I'm content." Sun Tai's grave was clear of weeds, indicating that someone often tended to it. Wang Ping stood in front of the grave for a long while before silently leaving. "Qing Yi, I think, not long from now, I'll go see my father. It's been 20 years since I last saw him." Wang Ping spoke softly. Qing Yi didn't say anything but quietly stayed by Wang Ping's side. It seemed that no matter where Wang Ping went in this life, even to the netherworld, she would stay with him, never leaving. This was not because of a past promise, but a form of companionship. There are some things that, when the time comes, I will need to get answers to. Wang Ping turned his head and glanced at Falling Moon Village before slowly walking away. In Xun'er City, Wang Lin hadn't visited the inn for a long time. He spent his days sitting in the courtyard, waiting for Wang Ping's return. Fallen leaves always need to return to their roots, and so too will wanderers one day return to their loved one's side. 3 months later, Xun'er City was filled with the tension of war. Several servants in the manor had left, leaving only one loyal old servant behind. With nowhere else to go, the old servant chose to stay. The entire Xun'er City seemed as if it were emptying out, with people fleeing from the chaos. Although the armies of the Heavenly Path Empire caused no civilian casualties, the fear still spread. Xun'er City, occupied by the Heavenly Path Empire, saw its forces continue to advance. Wang Ping stood outside the city, not entering, but leaving with the army. "Father, I have yet to fulfill the wish I made back then. When I do, I will come to see you." Time kept moving forward. Spring, summer, autumn, and winter passed in cycles. Before long, 5 years had gone by. Wang Ping, now 52. The Great Qin and Dust Cloud empires had both surrendered, and the Heavenly Path Empire became the only nation on Ranyan Star. From the time he left at 27, 25 years had passed. Wang Ping had achieved everything he had wanted, though much of it remained unknown to him, and the time had passed far too quickly. However, when Wang Lin had once said yes, everything that followed felt natural. Having claimed the empire, Wang Ping did not immediately visit Wang Lin. Instead, he calmly gazed at his lands, feeling the vastness of the heavens and earth. Wang Lin still sat in his courtyard each morning, accompanied by his old servant, living an ordinary life. Over the 50 years, his heart had gradually ascended. Quietly, without disturbance, he passed through the years. At 62, Wang Ping looked rather aged. The 10 years of being the supreme mortal had drained him. This exhaustion made him long for his childhood, the 8 years spent in the vastness of mountains and seas. But what he missed most was the feeling of having his father by his side for these past 28 years. Xun'er had also turned into an old woman, wrinkles marking her face, but her eyes were still full of tenderness. Despite all these years, they had never had children. On this day, Wang Ping left after 35 years of his father's late autumn. That autumn, the leaves danced in the wind, carrying a slight chill. Wang Ping stepped down from the position of supreme mortal, gave the empire to the loyal subjects who had followed him all the way, and left. What he took with him, aside from the memories of the past 35 years, was only Xun'er, as they boarded the carriage bound for Xun'er City, slowly making their way to his father. The carriage raced down the official road, with leaves fluttering along the sides, falling with the breeze and landing on the ground. As the carriage passed, the wind stirred them again, but they always fell back near the trees, as if some unseen force guided them to stay close, reluctant to drift too far. Fallen leaves always return to their roots, and the traveler always returns to their family. Just like the distance between the leaves and the earth, Xun'er City was growing closer. Wang Lin sat in the courtyard, the last of his old servants having passed away 3 years ago. The large house was now empty, with only him left. Before him was a table, 2 stools beside it. On the table were a few small dishes, a pot of wine, and 3 pairs of chopsticks. The dishes still emitted steam, their aroma filling the air. The wind carried the scent outside the mansion. The sound of hooves approached, and the creaking of wheels echoed as the carriage stopped outside. A few long neighs followed, as if announcing the arrival of the carriage. Wang Ping stepped down from the carriage, offering a gentle smile to Xun'er. He took her hand and entered through the gate. Above it hung a plaque with the words, Wang Residence, the blue background and red lettering showing signs of wear, the blue fading and the red revealing white marks. Wang Lin lifted his head, a motion that seemed to have been waiting for 35 years. A warm smile appeared on his face as he softly said, "Come, sit down. The dishes are still hot." Such simple words conveyed a warmth that was both comforting and familiar, with no questions, no doubts, and no excessive politeness, as if Wang Ping had always returned. Wang Lin's eyes held a softness. Wang Ping stared at his father, 35 years having passed since he last saw him in person. If there were any glimpses of him, it had only been in dreams. "Father," Wang Ping knelt, tears wetting his clothing. Xun'er also knelt beside him, softly speaking, "Father." Wang Lin stood and helped both Wang Ping and Xun'er to their feet, saying softly, "Let's eat." The meal took a long time. A sense of long-lost warmth stirred in Wang Ping's heart, a feeling he hadn't experienced in 35 years. Over the 35 years accompanying Wang Ping, Xun'er had long guessed Wang Lin's true identity. She knew that this elder was the same person who had single-handedly entered the illusion star and shocked all the cultivators in the northern Luo heaven region, Su Mu. After all, Yin Wufeng had mentioned Su Mu's name once. At this moment, she still found it hard to believe. She couldn't reconcile the gentle old man before her with the Su Mu who had once dominated the northern region. As for the various legends of Su Mu, Xun'er had never mentioned them to Wang Ping. After all, when those events had occurred, she wasn't even born. All she knew were rumors, things that she could never speak of. Until the moonlight gradually brightened and the autumn wind swept through, Wang Ping put down his chopsticks and looked at his father. His heart was filled with countless words, but at this moment, not a single one could be spoken. "Pinger, is there something you want to ask?" Wang Lin looked at Wang Ping and spoke slowly. "Father, I want to know about my mother." Over the past 60 years, ever since Wang Ping could remember, he had only asked once. That time, he saw his father's sorrow. Now, it was the second time he had spoken. Wang Lin fell silent. After a long while, a look of nostalgia appeared in his eyes. He gazed at the bright moon in the sky and softly said, "Let me tell you a story. Far, far away from here, there is a cultivation star, and its name is Vermilion Bird." Wang Lin's voice carried a deep sense of weariness as he began telling the story of a young man named Wang Lin, who had lived nearly 900 years. From his entry into cultivation, the Han sect, to the Heavenly Tao sect, Wang Lin's story unfolded like a scroll of life before Wang Ping and Qing Yi's eyes. The story was long, very long. Yet, between the lines, there was an indescribable aura that left anyone who heard it deeply shaken. Wang Ping stared blankly at his father, listening to the story. Qing Yi beside him widened her eyes. As she listened, she couldn't help but become immersed in it. Although she knew that the protagonist of the story was Wang Ping's father, the old man before them, she still felt the gravity of the tale. The female cultivator was named Willow Eyebrows.